Hello, good people. Welcome to another episode of Jammer Time. We have an exciting project today. This is a Honda GL1100 1982 Honda Goldwing Aspen Cave. It's pretty highly modified at this point. I've taken off all the body work. And today what we're going to do is take off these carburetors. They're good carburetors. They work okay. But I think we could do better, especially with the way it looks. We're going to be putting on a single carburetor conversion. This inky 34 Pict-3 carburetor. This all steel intake manifold. Real nice. Got that off of eBay. And of course the inky air cleaner. So we're going to go from this to this. It's going to look great, sound great. Let's do it. Okay, so we're going to start off by removing this handlebar clamp so we can take off the choke cable. I think that's a 5mm Allen head. Loosen those up so we can remove the clamp. The new carburetor has an electronic choke, so we can get rid of this unsightly contraption here. It's going to clean up the cockpit real nice. And there we go. Easy as that. So now we're going to reinstall the handlebar clamp. We want to get those nice and tight. Don't want the handlebars moving. And already it looks better to me. And it'll be nice not messing with the choke every time I start the bike. Nice and tight. There you go. So now we're just gonna pull the cable through the front of the bike carefully. There's lots of wires and things to get hung up on, but it's out. Gonna drop it down. Then we're gonna undo the screw that holds the cable to the choke lever. Then we'll be able to disconnect the barrel at the end of the cable. Phillips screwdriver. Let's take off the hold down clamp. We're going to pull the cable down, line up the wire with the slot and pull it out. Now we can pull the cable all the way out. So now we're going to move to the air cleaner box. This is the air cleaner top. We're going to remove this wing nut. That'll allow us to take off the, what I call the air horn, the top of the air cleaner box. That exposes the air filter element, and we'll be able to just pull that right out. And then down inside this box, we have the two 10mm bolts that hold the air box to the intake manifold. So we're going to get a 10mm socket, a long extension and a ratchet, and get these out of there. The inky air cleaner is going to look great here. Big improvement over this big black ugly box. Let's play a game. Can we keep a hold of this bolt and not drop it down the intake? Let's find out. The tension is growing. Here we go. And got it. So now everything's loose, and I've already taken off two bypass tubes that connect to the back of the air cleaner box. So this is all loose already. So basically we just gotta pull it out, separate it from the intake. How about that? So now we're going to work on getting the fuel feed line loose from the carburetor. There's the fuel pump. The line goes to the carburetor. The other line in the fuel pump comes from the fuel tank. I already have this emptied out of fuel, so if you don't, be careful of gas. You want to have a rag down there to catch it maybe. Find the clamp that holds on the line to the carburetor. We're going to unscrew it quite a bit so that it's nice and loose, so it'll fit over the nipple on that line. It's hard to pull off, and there it goes. Then we're going to undo the vacuum line from the bottom of the carburetor, and that goes to the vacuum advance. Then we'll undo the spark plug wires. Get those out of the way because we're going to take off the air tubes next, and then the tops of the carburetors. Let's do it. So now we're going to take off these air tubes. There's 4 10mm acorn bolts that hold these on. We're going to take these off. This is going to allow us to pull the carburetors out the other side. And don't forget that these have a washer on them. Don't drop them. Let's move to the other side. Same thing over here. We're going to pull out the spark plug wires. We have the same 4 acorn bolts. And by removing those, we'll be able to loosen the manifold and the carburetor away from the engine. At this point, I'm starting to get kind of excited. There's that washer. Get over to the last one. Once we get that pulled out, we should be able to lift up and separate it from the engine. All right. So now we're going to pull the tops of these carburetors off. There's 4 screws holding them on, 2 apiece. And to get to them, we're going to have to push the carburetors inside the frame. That frame is in the way. We wouldn't be able to get all the screws. Move it over a couple inches and it gives you access to all 4. Working on the last one now. Once we get that last screw out, we're going to pull the tops straight up. We have to be very careful about the spring that's inside there. We don't want to lose it or damage it. You'll see what I'm talking about. Top is off. You can see the spring down there. So we're going to take that spring, put it in that top, and we're going to put that top back on that carburetor. And the same with this one. Top off. Get the spring. Spring in that top, back on that carburetor. After we pull them out. Here we go. Once that's done, should be pretty easy to just pull this out from the left-hand side of the bike. Just like that. So I've got the caps back on the carburetors in the proper place. Next order of business will be the throttle cables. This bike has 2 cables. We're going to loosen up the nuts on the bottom of the holders. Nice and loose. I'm going to activate the throttle lever so I got slack in the cable. I'm holding it and a little difficult to get out, so we're going to have to get the needle nose. And there it is. Once that one's done, we can get the other cable loose. Drop that down, pull out the barrel, and there you go. All loose. So you have 2 cables. One of them's a pusher cable, one of them's a puller cable. So we're going to figure out which one pushes. We don't need it anymore. We're going to separate the 2 halves of this housing by undoing the Phillips screws at the bottom. Once we get that separated, we're going to see the 2 cables attached to the throttle itself. Some of these covers only have 2 screws, but this one in particular has 3. And I think it's going to look better with just 1 cable coming out. A little less cluttered. Okay. Now those halves separate. You can see the cable with the barrel on the end, just like on the other end, the carburetor end. This one pulls, this one pushes. That's the one we're going to get rid of. Again, pull the wire through the slot. We'll unscrew the holder at the bottom. And that'll just drop out. And we'll be able to pull that cable through and get rid of it. And I'll use something to fill up that hole, some JB Weld or something. We don't want a hole there, allowing water and dirt to get in and mucking up our cable system. Okay, so I'm going to pull the wire tight and put these 2 halves back together, making sure that the cable is in the slot. Just get a screw and put that back in. So here's the last screw. Okay, let's check out the cable at the carburetor side, make sure we have nice free movement. And we do. It's a go. Moving right along, people. Okay, that's that. It's out. There it is. Next thing we're going to do is plug up these intake holes so nothing drops down in there or any dirt can get in there. It's a windy day. I got the garage door open. I'm using just some paper towels. Making sure nothing can get by them into the ports. Let's get these flanges off. They connect the air tubes to the carburetors. The rubber with the metal band and a Phillips screw that holds them on the bottom. Get the Phillips screwdriver and let's get these off. Now you want to get these real loose because these are hard enough to take off as it is. Not all the way off, but very loose. Okay, we're down to the last one. Again, you want this metal band to be as loose as possible without coming off. Alright, everybody's loose. So we're going to put a towel on the ground so we have a little more secure base. Get the carburetor down there. Then we're going to get a big screwdriver and a rag. We're going to pry these suckers off. There's the prying points right at the face of the carburetor. Use a rag to protect that. Put the screwdriver on the side of the flange and pry it off. Do the same thing to the other side. It's going to be hard, so don't be shy. And then yank that sucker off. Then I'm going to put it on the port that it comes from so I don't get them mixed up. I don't know if that's really necessary or not. I just like to keep things in order like that. So now we're down to the last one. You see how I get that in the side there? And you'll feel it when it gets over the lip. Big yank. Let's start putting things together. We're going to get the front of the manifold. We know it's the front because of the throttle cable holder. I still got my barrel attached there. I'm going to have to get that off. But for now, we're going to fit the tubes onto the flanges. Make sure everything fits good. And they do. Feel great, nice and tight. So now I have the manifold set in place. We're gonna start fitting things before we bolt it down. First thing is this cable. The barrel that's on the end of the cable now doesn't fit into the hole that's on the carburetor. So we're going to have to modify this to make it work right. There's where our plate is on the manifold. And we're going to use this back adjuster to fit on there I'm going to take the crescent wrench, attach that to the, let's call it the holder, 10mm wrench to get the nut loose. And then we can unscrew the threads from the holder. Just like that. Now we have our cable exposed there. So what we're going to do after that is grab the dikes, and we're going to chop that barrel off. How many tries will it take? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need some new dikes. We're going to pull that off. Alright, so now we have the empty holder back there. And I'm going to take that part that I just pulled off. And we're going to need it to attach to that holder to use as an adjuster for that adapter there. So I've cut that off. Nice clean end. Let's pull this out a little bit so we can put it inside the adapter. You're going to need a nut on the far side. Got to take that nut off so I can stick it through the adapter. And that'll be one side of our adjustment. And the other nut will be the back side of the adjustment. We're going to set it about halfway for now. You can see how that fits in there real good. We're just going to put the cable in there. Put the manifold back in place. At some point. There we go. And then we're going to connect the two pieces together. So I'm going to screw that tight to that adjuster nut. And then we're done with that. So I got some RTV black. Because I messed up the O-rings and I can't get any here in town, and I don't want to wait to order them, I'm going to make a seal here. Now the important thing is I want to fill up that groove that you see, but not use so much that it's going to squeeze out all over the place when I tighten this up. Just make a nice even layer all around. That looks good. And then let's wipe out the inside and off the edge on the inside, so none of that gets into our cylinders when we start up the bike. That's a beauty. So we're just going to set that in the proper spot. And because it's sticky, it's going to stay there while I get some bolts, put it in its proper place. Notice that I had the washer on that bolt. Same with that one. Get them nice and finger tight. I'm going to go ahead and torque those down too. And then we'll put on the other one. So now I have these both on this side, nice and tight, not going nowhere. So let's attach the manifold to those two. They should just fit right in. And then we're going to work on the other side. Same thing. Going to fill up these grooves. Just enough RTV to make a seal. I guess I should apologize for my extra dirty hands. I done a strut job right before this one and didn't wash my hands in between jobs. We're getting that RTV out of the inside lip. This side's going to be a little bit different. We're going to have to stick the tube on. The flange like that. And hopefully everything is going to kind of line up. You might have to jiggle things around. But before I set it down and start smearing, I'm going to get a bolt, get it started in the hole. That way we're not smearing the RTV all over the place, making a mess. Get this one ready to go. Same as the other ones. Getting hard to find a clean spot on the rag or paper towel. Beauty. Now you notice I left the manifold slightly raised so that other one didn't touch yet. Now that I have this one attached, I can get a bolt, start screwing these things in. Now you want to be careful with these bolts. You want to get them in nice and straight. It should be somewhat easy to turn, because the last thing you want to do is strip out the threads. Working on the last one. For obvious reasons, probably the hardest one, but went right in. Let's torque these down. I like to get them to just touch a little bit before I tighten them up. Once I have them all in and somewhat attached, I go ahead and torque them down. Nice. You can see not a bunch of RTV squeezed out of there. It's just a perfect little bead. And I'm sure it's the same way on the inside. All right, moving right along. Let's get these bands on the flanges tightened up. We want to get these as tight as we can. Don't want no air leaking past. Once they're nice and tight, everything should be ready to go to put the carburetor on the top of this manifold. All right. Nice and tight. Everything looks great. Now we need to find a power supply for our electric choke and our electric fuel cutoff valve. I've got some wires here that used to go to the fairings that used to be on this bike. And we're going to look for a power supply. And after we find that, we'll attach 2 wires to it. Ah, we have power. Let's see if it works with the switch. And it does. Beauty. Let's go for it. Alright, now it's time to fit the carburetor. We're going to prep it by sticking these studs into the proper holes. Short side down. You can see I have a gasket and the nuts. I'm going to put these nuts on, double nut it so we can tighten these studs down into the carburetor. Whoops. I haven't noticed yet, but I have that upside down. It's not going to work. Can't get the wrench on it. Alright, let's fix it. Gonna flip this nut over. Or that one. Come on now. Now we can get the wrench and the crescent wrench on these and snugging these 2 nuts up to each other nice and tight. And then I'm going to drive that into the carburetor nice and tight. Put the wrench back on the bottom nut. Hold it secure while I loosen up the top nut. And let's do the same thing to the other side. So now I have the gasket placed on the studs, and we're going to slip that in through the top. You can see the ground wire I attached to the body of the carburetor. You want to be real careful that the gasket goes down square with the carburetor. Fits nice and tight. There's that ground wire I was talking about. We're going to find a place to attach that. And there's the two wires that I connected to the power supply with the proper ends that will attach to the choke and the pull-off valve. Connecting the choke now. There it goes. And we'll put the other side on the fuel cutoff valve. Now you can see that stud hanging down right in the middle of the picture there. I've got one nut attached to one side. Gonna put the nut on the other. There we go. This takes a 1/2-inch wrench. We're gonna buck those down evenly. Now we're gonna reattach the cable and slip that in through the barrel. Get that all ready to go. Well then, let's go over some details here, some close-ups of what we've done. So we're going to look at that barrel and how the cable attached to it. There's the adjuster, nice and tight against the adapter plate. Plenty of room on both sides to adjust either way. And if we look back at the barrel, you see how the screw there holds against the wire inside the barrel, nice and tight. And if we look from the top, you can see the barrel going through the throttle lever. And there's also a counter pin in there that holds the barrel in place so it can't fall out one side or the other. And there's the cable going through the barrel. Works perfectly. And again, you see the adjuster going through the adapter plate. And look at my fancy heat shrink on the electrical connection. Nice and clean. And here's the one on the choke. Nice and clean. So, this is my fuel line coming from the fuel pump. If you look, you'll see the arrows telling the direction of the fuel flow. Tightened up my throttle so it wouldn't spin while I was trying to do this, so I can get a little control. That doesn't sound too good, does it? Let's see if I got gas, huh? Okay, so I put a little gas in this. I didn't pay attention. You see the gas gauge there. I got a little gas in there now. Let's see what happens now, huh? Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Big shout out to Mike Garcia for the great camera work. Please subscribe to this channel, like this video. Rock on till the next Jammer Time.